Lacey.
And I'm Sam.
Welcome to Monster Soup and Creature Brews, the podcast where we talk about all things monster movies, big, small, creepy, or downright ridiculous.
From movie monsters to cryptids lurking in the shadows of folklore, we're here to explore them all. So kick back, grab a snack,
or a drink,
and let's dive into some monster-filled mayhem.
I don't have a lot of experience with vampires, but I have hunted werewolves. I shot one once, but by the time I got to it, it had turned back into my neighbor's dog.
Okay.
And with that segue, we are going to be talking about the movie Van Helsing today in honor of the best month of the year, October.
The famed monster hunter is sent to Transylvania to stop Count Dracula, who is using Dr. Frankenstein's research in a werewolf for nefarious purposes.
Explain It Badly says, a guy with great hair and no memories hunts monsters for the church, accidentally collects every universal monster along the way, and somehow ends up beefing with Dracula, who's running a baby bat factory. There's a werewolf subplot and a very stressed out friar, and enough dramatic coat flapping to power a small village.
It's true, there is a lot of coat flapping.
A lot of hair in this movie too.
Waving in the wind.
Yes, because Hugh Jackman's hair is fabulous. Dracula's hair is fabulous. The three corpse brides have great hair. Really, I think that was actually one of the major subplots of the movie was hair.
They tend to do that in the 2000s. Well, this was clearly going for like a over-the-top action film feel, even though it was like supposed to be like a vampire killing movie.
They clearly wanted to embrace some of the more traditional vampire movies, but they also blended it with steampunk and then comedy relief. So it just kind of, the end product was a little bit
weird.
I don't know, it just didn't gel well together, any of it really.
Yeah, it felt very disjointed. We're like getting into an analysis before we even talk about the movie.
We really are, and we meant to do better, so we apologize for that, because moving forward, we've decided that we're going to put our movie ratings at the beginning, so you guys kind of know how we feel about it to start with, and we're also going to be rating our movies with a tier from here on out. How this will work is, tier 1 is going to be your children-friendly movies. They're light and fluffy, they do have monsters in them, or monster-like creatures, but family watches. Think Scooby-Doo, The Sea Beast, Elio's a great one.
Minecraft? Because Minecraft technically has monsters in it.
I guess.
Orc monsters.
I mean, there's zombies. I would count Minecraft.
Yeah.
Another great one is How to Train Your Dragon. My Mom Went on a Date with a Vampire. Really, anything that Disney makes is going to be a tier 1. Well, actually, I can't say that because Disney's bought out Hulu. And they own the Aliens franchise now.
Alien
so you know
is
what?
a princess.
She is a Disney queen at this moment. So really, it's anything that you would watch with a child is going to be a tier 1 movie. Tier 2, probably more straight up monster movies. There is some violence and some people snacking, but it's mostly off screen. Think the first Jurassic Park.
It's more like a PG-13-esque.
Yeah. I think the first Jurassic Park is a really good example. You do see some people get eaten, but for the most part, it's not super gory.
Right, you're not seeing body parts flying?
No. I would put Eight-Legged Freaks in this tier 2 category.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know, I think Tremors, tier 2. Tier 3 is going to be more of your gore, but it's not a true horror film. This is going to be Piranhas 3D, is a tier 3.
Or like, there's blood and gore, but it's like, hee ha ha jokey.
Yeah, funny. Yeah. This movie, Van Helsing, I would put in a tier 3. It's not serious enough. It's not scary enough to feel realistic. And then last but not least is going to be our tier 4 monster movies. And those are more not the first Aliens movie, but some of the more recent remakes of the Alien. Well, not remakes. Some of the more recent Alien movies that have come out that are a little bit more graphic.
Yeah. Just think people's arms getting bitten or ripped off, decapitations, anything that's like definitely rated R, definitely going to give nightmares in your sleep.
Yes, tier 4 is monster horror, but it's not meant to be funny, which I think is going to be the real delineation between tier 3 and tier 4.
Yeah, like an actual horror movie versus just a good monster movie.
Yeah. As I said, I'm rating Van Helsing as a tier 3. I do think they were trying to be serious, but it doesn't read that way. And the horror is old enough and obvious enough and campy enough that it really just isn't a scary movie.
It was 2004 serious. Like that's about the best way to describe it.
So, tier 3, and then I'm giving this movie a D.
You're being generous.
Or are you giving it an F?
I guess it wasn't a terrible watch. So I think D is probably a good spot for it to be in, but it's barely there.
This is a movie I would definitely enjoy watching if I was a little drunk. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, but this is definitely a one and done. Like, I have no desire to go watch this again. Grabbers, I could see that being like a holiday watch. Like once a year, St. Patty's Day, and just watch this movie. Not Van Helsing. This isn't like every Halloween I want to watch this at least once. It was so goofy.
Grabbers is a tier 2 for me, for the record. This movie was campy. It was fun to watch. Like I said, if I was a little bit tipsy, I think I would have enjoyed it maybe a little bit more. The characters were funny. I thought it was hilarious. I don't think it was trying to be hilarious, but I thought it was hilarious. I'd watch it again. It's a D for me.
Yeah, I think for me, D movies typically fall into it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. It's very just meh.
All right, now that we have told you our tier and our rating. Wait, were you at an F or? No, you said D. Now that we've told you our tier and our rating, Samuel's going to kick us off and dive right into that recap.
Yeah, this recap is going to start a little weird because if anyone's ever watched the original Frankenstein, this movie kind of starts off where that movie ends. Like the last 15, 20 minutes of the original Frankenstein is like the beginning of this movie.
I actually kind of liked that touch. I thought that was a good segue, and it paid homage to some original cinematography. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, I probably like 4 or 5 years ago watched the original Frankenstein for Chris's podcast. So I remember parts of this where the mob comes to the laboratory just as he's like, it's alive, and Frankenstein's monster gets up. Pretty much the same thing happens, but it happens with a bit of a twist. So let me start this off.
You should probably give a shout out to your friend, because you just mentioned his podcast.
Oh, yeah, if you want to go watch Critics Without Credentials. I don't know if he's still recording anymore, because I think he wanted to either take a break. He's helping Devin with Devin's. I have a friend. I should find out the podcast name for Devin. I don't know where hers is going to be. I also have a friend who's starting a Gilmore Girls podcast, so if that's up your alley and you want to listen to some people talk about Gilmore Girls, find her. As soon as I get the name, I'll shout it out next episode or something.
A little bit of a different vibe than what we watch, but...
Same fun-loving people.
Yes, same awesome people, different vibe.
So here we go. The movie starts off at the end of the movie with the creation of Frankenstein's monster. I want to make a distinct difference between Dr. Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. So I'm going to call Frankenstein's monster, monster. And when they reference Dr. Frankenstein, Frankenstein. Other words will get confused because you'll be talking about the doctor and his research and his experiments, and then you'll be talking about the monster, and it gets really confusing. So if I say monster, no, it's Frankenstein's monster. And if I say Frankenstein, it's the doctor. Anyways.
Anyhoozle.
Actually, into the recap. The famous It's Alive scene with a twist. Dracula comes in at the moment he succeeds and tells them that now that his creation is complete, he can use it for his own purposes. They don't say what it is, but even Dr. Frankenstein says he would never.
Which lets you know that it's probably pretty messed up if the dude who was comfortable ripping apart corpses and sewing them back together in the world's grossest jigsaw puzzle looks horrified.
Right? And reanimating it. Yeah. So, someone who has already got a very low moral bar is telling you, oh God, no, never. Well, it's probably pretty bad.
Not even a low moral bar. The dude who clearly is good with some real gross shit.
Yeah. Igor, his henchman, betrays him to Dracula. Frankenstein, the doctor, grabs a sword off the wall and tries to impale Dracula. In reality, Dracula impales himself onto the sword just to show that it doesn't matter to him. He then bites Frankenstein's neck and drops him down. Frankenstein's monster, breaks free of his bindings and throws a giant piece of electrical equipment at Dracula. It explodes and flings Dracula into a fireplace. Monster grabs Dr. Frankenstein and leaves the lab. Igor calls out Dr. Frankenstein, which attracts the mob that's been gathering outside of his castle. And they change direction because originally they were heading into the castle, but now that they see the monster carrying Frankenstein over to the windmill, they all follow suit. And just like the original film, the monster heads to the top of the windmill, which almost immediately catches fire as the mob starts to throw torches onto the windmill. Shortly after, we see 4 bats flying into Frankenstein's castle to the windmill. The crowd runs screaming, "Vampires!" We see Dr. Frankenstein being held by his creation, who screams "Father" at the top of his lungs, just as the floor collapses right from under them. 1 year later, we see a wanted poster for Van Helsing in French. We get Hugh Jackman in all his 2000s glory, donning the signature outfit of Van Helsing, his little like top hat and his long trench coat. A scream is heard and Van Helsing heads towards a dead woman. He finds a smoking cigar on the body and he looks off at a distant church. He sees something climbing onto the roof and laughing. He heads to the attic of that church where he runs into Hyde, Dr. Jekyll's alter ego. Helsing reads off all of the crimes that Hyde has committed. Hyde snuffs out his cigar that he's smoking on his tongue and eats it. Helsing tells him he would like to take him in alive so he can extract his better half, to which Hyde laughs and then just starts fighting. He smacks Helsing away, who pulls out a dual pistols, and before he even hits the ground, he starts blasting. Hyde ducks away. Helsing pulls out a little like spinner ball and then activates it, and like these blades come out and it's like a little handsaw. Hyde swings from the rafters and tries to charge Helsing. He misses and runs into a giant bell which disorients him. He then grabs the giant bell and puts it on Helsing. Helsing cuts out the bottom of the floor around the bell. He then hides inside the bell while Hyde lifts up the bell and tries to look for Helsing. Helsing drops out and cuts off Hyde's arm. Hyde throws Helsing up through the ceiling and onto the roof. Hyde jumps up and then grabs Helsing, throws him over the roof, and as he's falling, he pulls out a grappling hook, which he shoots back up and then straight through Hyde, like through his chest, and hooks onto the back of him, allowing Helsing to land safely, and then he grabs the rope and tries to yank Hyde down, which he fails, and then Hyde turns around and yanks him back up. Helsing swings up, and Hyde trips over the other side of the roof. He falls and transforms back to Dr. Jekyll as he hits the ground and dies. And for anyone who's ever played Assassin's Creed 2, you would recognize that at this moment he says, Requiescat in pace, so rest in peace in Latin.
I Googled it just because when we were watching it, we were wondering, and he was the guy who wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He was Scottish, hence the Scottish accent.
Oh, that makes sense why he's Scottish.
I sometimes have a little bit of a hard time focusing when I watch movies, and my mind tends to go off on tangents a little bit. And I had questions about the accent, and he was.
Well, it was baffling because like they're in France, and he has a Scottish accent. And I'm not saying the Scottish can't get to France, but it's like, why is this guy killing people in France? And he's not even from here.
Yes. So Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was written by the Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson, born in Edinburgh, Scotland. Hence the accent. I assumed that they were paying homage there.
Ah, makes sense.
The one thing that I do think was interesting that becomes kind of a bigger plot in this series is that when he murders the monster, kills the monster, is that they do seem to just transform back into whatever their original human form was. So in this world, more or less, you are absolutely, this isn't like you have an extra ability and you learn how to manage it. You are just evil and then you transform back into human.
I think there's probably different cases. Like a werewolf, you kill the werewolf and then they turn back into the human they originally were. Or like in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde's situation, he had no control over that transformation, so Hyde would just take over whenever. And it was very Hulk, very similar to the Hulk.
Yeah, but even he transformed back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe it was just a case of the monsters he happened to be fighting were, or the cases where he got caught were cases where it was some type of monster that was transforming and then transforming back after. Like if someone gets possessed by a demon, and then you kill them, they turn back into their human form after they die because it's not going to stay a demon.
Because the monsters, when they die, do go back, they revert back to their original human form. We can see that Van Helsing is wanted. We see these like wanted posters.
Yeah, everybody just assumes he's just out there killing people when really he's doing God's work,
Literally, he works with the Vatican, we find out.
Helsing, for some unfathomable reason, stays in sight as Jekyll's body is discovered, and they call out to him, calling him a murderer.
Not unfathomable. Dramatic. He wanted...
Dramatic is facts.
He's a showman, Sam. You can tell from the beautiful hair.
Well, he even, like, tips his hat. They're like, you murderer! He, like, tips his hat and then walks away. Like,
he's pulling a Darth Vader where, you got to be there for the show.
As the kids would call it, he's aura farming. Just sitting on the roof. Like, yeah, I did that. What of it?
It was so much easier to murder people back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how could no one catch this guy? Like, he's just on a horse. It's not like he's going super fast. Helsing heads back to Vatican City in Rome. He walks into a church and enters a confessional, where he tells the father that his mission was complete. The father complains about how flashy his methods are. Helsing, in turn, complains about being the most wanted man in Europe, and he wishes the order would do something about it. The father snaps back that the order does not exist. He then recounts when they found him crawling up their steps, half dead with no memory, that he was sent to do God's work.
Bold assumption, by the way.
Yeah. You know what, Father? Fuck you. That's how I feel about that.
Like, that's a bold... He could have just been drunk off his ass.
Yeah. I do not agree that someone half dead with no memory shows up on your step. Like, oh, we can use him like an assassin to kill off all these monsters. He must have been sent by God.
He's suffering from clinical amnesia, and you guys are just out there being like, we're not going to have your back, and we're definitely not going to bail you out of prison, but go kill those monsters for us. Cool?
I got to tell you, because I already know the ending, I kind of want to go look up the actual lore behind whoever created the original Van Helsing and find out more information, because they make some wild leaps in judgment and facts in this movie. And I'm very curious how much of that was based in lore and how much of this was like creative freedom.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't do that research, and the only other thing I know about Van Helsing comes from Hotel Transylvania.
Oh.
So I feel like is even less accurate than what the original lore would be, because it's Adam Sandler pretending to be Count Dracula.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Not to mention, I don't think this is the Dracula that we know, but he's like, his real name is like Vladimir Tepesh, not whatever the fuck he says his name is in this movie.
And to be clear, we could have done this research, but we chose not to. We're just here to talk about the movie.
Well, what's funny, I'm going to do the research after we record, which is probably not very useful. Back to the recap. They head down into a secret chamber, which is full of men performing experiments. The father monologues about how they're the last defense between man and demon that walk the earth. Helsing's new mission takes him to Transylvania. Essentially, it boils down to a royal family line that has been defending the country, vowed that they would either kill Dracula or no one in their family would ever enter heaven. They're left with only a few family members left, and they're almost wiped out by Dracula, who's been picking them off over the centuries.
That's a really fucked up thing, by the way, to bet your entire family and all the future generations just remaining in purgatory forever. It's messed up.
It's a gamble, but it also, on the flip side, if they succeed, everyone in his family line gets to go to heaven forever. TLDR, no one in his family line survives. So
I'm just saying, like, that's, if I was your, do you think it's like blood only? Because if you came home after making that proclamation, declaration, oath, whatever you want to call it, and told me, oh, hey, babe, by the way, whole family's cursed to maybe not go to heaven if this super hard to kill mythical monster murders us all one by one, do you know how pissed I'd be at you? You're sleeping on the couch forever.
Agreed. And it's even worse when we'll get to this part later in the movie, but it gets even worse. Their ancestor left a corner of an ancient scroll 400 years ago that reads, "In the name of God, open this door." Next to the text is an insignia. That same insignia is on the ring of Helsing. The father thinks Helsing might find answers about his past if he goes to Transylvania. Next, Helsing meets up with his like Q James Bond equivalent, who's going to show him all his new gadgets for monster hunting. Carl, what a name. I don't know the origins of the name Carl, but I have a feeling it has nothing to do with Rome, Vatican, French, any of that.
Italian.
Right? Hey, Carl, can you help me with the killing this vampire?
Hey, Marvin. No,
Yeah.
Calvin. Hey, Calvin.
Yeah.
Can you come help me with this?
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it doesn't ring home. It does remind me, if you want to go read a good light RPG, Dungeon Crawler Carl, it's bomb, literally. Those who know just know. Anyways, back to Carl. He gives him a ring of garlic, holy water, a silver stake, and a crucifix. Then he brings Helsing over to a rapid-fire gas-powered crossbow. He also gives him a magma bomb that they're not quite sure what it does. He also flicks some nitroglycerin and has a giant explosion. And to Carl's surprise, when Van Helsing is about to head out, he lets him know that the Cardinal has commanded that he joins Helsing in Transylvania. In the next scene, it cuts to a man tied up to a standing log. He's clearly being used to bait something out. It turns out what he's baiting is a werewolf. Just when the werewolf lunges at him, he jumps out of his bindings and on top of the log post. He then grabs a rope, which pulls him up into a tree, and we find out that this is Velkin, the prince and the last male of the royal line. His sister Anna charges towards the werewolf with a sword out. The werewolf attempts to attack her, but falls into a pitfall that has a cage that is rising when they pulled the ropes off. Velkin attempts to jump onto the rising cage and also shoot a gun with silver bullets into the cage. He flubs this pretty hard and drops his gun. He jumps off the cage into a tree, and all his men on the ground begin shooting at the werewolf cage. Velkin yells to Anna to find his gun, because apparently his gun is the only one with silver bullets.
It seems like a massive overlook to only arm one gun with silver bullets.
They're morons. I'm sure at the time silver bullets are probably really expensive, so they can't afford to like man every man. But they could, if this is life or death, right? And you know you're gonna have to fight this werewolf. Silver weapons, like spears, make a bunch of spears. That way they can pin it up in a cage and all just poke at it with silver spears, or get more than one gun.
All I'm saying is that there seem to be multiple silver bullets in that gun, so why wouldn't you split them up amongst maybe 3 people? Maybe if you have a Calvin on your team and he's the best shot, he should have 2 of the silver bullets. I should have 2 of the silver bullets.
Because I can tell you right now, Velkin is not the best shot. In fact, no. I think he's an idiot from where because it'd had a better chance if he had jumped to the tree, let the cage come up, and then he'd have direct line of sight to just shoot the werewolf. And instead, he tries to do some fancy jump maneuver onto the cage as it's rising up and also simultaneously shoot, immediately like lands on the cage, stumbles, drops the pistol. Who are you trying to impress? It just didn't make sense.
I have several questions about Velkin in this movie, and I want you to know their names. It's Velkin, Anna, and then we've got Van Helsing and Carl.
Carl.
So there's some interesting
dichotomy between the names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enough that it made me smile when I watched this movie. Also, most of the characters are wearing
period appropriate attire.
Or semi-period appropriate attire. They have clearly like taken some modern steampunk themes and added them to period appropriate attire. Anna, they just were like, we're gonna make her look hot, push those boobs up, heels.
Yeah, Van Helsing's, a lot of his attire also seemed very out of the period look.
But at least I believe that is something that you might wear if you're hunting a werewolf.
He at least has a pilgrim hat.
Yeah. Whereas I don't believe that if you were traipsing through the woods, running for your life, hunting werewolves, being hunted by an ancient vampire, you would be dressed in, knee-high boot heels.
It's bad. As he jumps off the cage into a tree, all his men on the ground begin shooting at the werewolf in the cage. Velkin yells to Anna to find his gun, because apparently his gun is the only one with silver bullets. The men continue shooting and shoot the rope that is suspending the cage. Anna finally locates the gun and it's directly under the cage. Just as he's about to grab it, the cage falls on top of it. She sprints away and falls down right at the edge of a cliff. Now, this is the part that baffles me a little bit. So her brother somehow manages to get down from the tree, grab the gun, outpace her running from the werewolf and the werewolf chasing her, knock her away as the werewolf's lunging at her, shoot the werewolf, and then get knocked off a cliff into the water below. Either he has the most impressive athletics on this planet, or he can teleport. It has to be one or the other. Like she's running for a while, and she's not like zigzagging. She's running straight away. She runs straight away from where they are fighting the werewolf to a cliff. And somehow, some way, because you had told me he had started sprinting at the same time as the werewolf. Okay, maybe he could have caught up, but he had to look for the gun, which should have been under the cage, which just crashed down. Make it make sense. It doesn't.
The werewolf is gigantic too.
Yeah, like huge. One, I'm surprised it took as long for the werewolf to catch Anna as it did. I guess he did technically have to like get out of the cage and then start running after her, but gets to Helsing and Carl on a ship, then on horseback, crossing a snowy mountain. They ride into the village where the entire town is watching them, and it's kind of creepy. As they dismount, as they walk through the town, all the villagers are watching and following them. Finally, one of the townsfolk says, "Welcome to Transylvania." Anna walks over onto a platform and asks them to turn around. She asks them to show their faces because they don't trust strangers. As they're talking to Anna, a man is measuring them up, implying it's for a casket. Anna tries to have them disarmed, and Helsing tells her that they're there to help. She says she doesn't need help, and Helsing pulls out his crossbow and aims it at Anna, who ducks, and we see 3 vampires in like bat banshee form flying in. The vampires try to kidnap Anna and kill Helsing. Lots of panicking and running around later. We only really lose a cow. They don't show. I guess there's one guy who gets his blood sucked.
Oh no, the cow lives.
I know, I was getting to that. At that point, though, we thought we had lost the cow. Helsing shoots hundreds of arrows and doesn't hit anything. Like, he's just like spraying and praying. Eventually, the sun peeks out from behind the clouds, which makes the vampires hide. Once the sun is covered by clouds again, they break out and snatch Anna. They corner Anna in a house. Helsing dips his bolts in holy water and manages to make the shot of shots and kill one, which is impressive because he probably wasted like 200 arrows or bolts. And then magically, once he puts holy water on it, his aim is true and he manages to score a good shot. Once he gets the one shot, though, he can just follow up, pins it to like the top of the roof, and then, the sun peeks on it and it just explodes.
At least he had enough common sense to know that you should have more than one silver arrow, bullet, whatever you have.
Oh, bolt dipped in holy water? Mm-hmm. Indeed. Back in the house, just when Anna is about to die, the other vampires sense the death of their sister. They immediately take flight and run back to Dracula.
Not their sister wife, a la Cody Brown.
A vampire sister, but yes. Cody Brown is probably a little more accurate. They are sister wives. They immediately take flight and run back to Dracula. After the vampire melts, everyone regroups. The cow somehow survived. The townspeople are up in arms at Van Helsing for killing a vampire. He tells them vampires normally only kill what they need, maybe 1 or 2 people a month. Now they will kill for revenge.
Even by those numbers, there's 4 of them, right? So Dracula and the 3 sister wives.
It's like 8 people a month.
That's kind of a lot of people when you live in a rural, isolated Transylvanian town.
There can't be more than like maybe a couple hundred people there.
And I mean, when you consider death rates in medieval societies, that's really hard to replace that many people in a year.
I think maybe the mindset is because we don't know if there's other villages in the area. So let's say there's like 6 or 7 villages in the area. It probably doesn't. It's no different than how many people probably die on average anyways. So they don't really notice when a couple people just up and leave. The only people who would ever probably take offense is when it's someone's loved one that goes missing. Then I would feel some type of way.
Still, 8 people a month all year long. That's 96 people. Even if you have 3 isolated villages and there's no evidence that they happen to have that, that's quite a decline in the population. There's no way their birth rates are matching it.
No, there's no way they're keeping up.
So the argument that it's really not that much and it's not that bad doesn't hold water. You would have to be importing like food. You'd have to be importing food for them somehow.
Yeah.
Which is a dark way to go if you're a farm worker.
Hire mercenaries. Send them into the mountains.
That'd be a dirty trick. Can you imagine if you're like, yeah, we just need you to guard that castle on the hill. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll pay you at the end of the month when your contract's finished, okay?
We'll pay you well.
Okay, Vlad, we're gonna pay you, we promise. Just go to that castle, tell the HR lady that you're here for your assignment. She'll do your onboarding paperwork, and then you come back here and I'll pay you.
That's dark.
That's how it would be done in the modern day.
Facts. That same man who explained everything asked what name they should put on their gravestone. Anna walks up and says his name is Van Helsing, which makes the crowd no longer interested in confronting them. Anna says they have courage, and now she owes them a drink. It jumps over to Dracula, who's spawning out of a coffin, screaming, Marishka. I'm assuming that's one of the dead vampires or one of his wives.
That's one of the sister wives, yes.
Okay. He then starts ranting about how they will never kill more than they need, much less their share. Why can't they be left alone? This is rich coming from a man who's trying to spawn like hundreds of baby vampires to go kill people.
Okay, talking about the population not supporting the food chain here, the 1,000+ bat things he's trying to hatch from goop are absolutely going to eliminate all of the food sources. Y'all are going to starve.
Right, because let's even assume that they have multiple villages out there. They would clean that out in no time. Mm-hmm. Are they just going to go across the land like locusts and just feed on everything?
Like 1 month in, no more people. And one thing we don't do great evolutionary wise is we are not like spiders. We do not have thousands of babies.
No. Like if he had wanted to make 10 or 11, you could maybe find a way to sustain that. But he's talking like hundreds, maybe even more, like hundreds that we saw. So that's interesting. I think it's interesting that he made that comment, knowing that he's literally trying to screw these people over in the long run. So I think it's funny that he just said it out loud. He was like, "You're at home. Who was this for? Like, who are you showing off for to say that? Oh, we only do our fair share. Why are they messing with us?"
Maybe eternal life just makes you really bored and you lean into the theatrics of life.
Gotta be.
Or maybe he was just really dramatic to begin with. We don't know.
The other 2 wives of Dracula are distraught over losing their sister. Dracula confronts them by saying he will get another bride. They cry to him, saying, "Do we mean so little to you? Do you have no heart?" And then Dracula, this is very comedic because he kind of tells a dad joke, or if anybody's ever watched One Piece, a Brook moment. He says, "No, I don't have a heart." And then he begins to rant about not having feelings and how he feels hollow. And then he sends his minions after their new visitor, while he and his wives vanish into the wall to do vampire things. Back with Helsing, Anna is showing them around her castle. The castle used to be Dracula's 4 centuries ago. So there's some inconsistencies, and I'll bring it up later, because right now is not the best time to do it. Remember when she talks about this, about how this castle used to be Dracula's 4 centuries ago.
Dun, dun, dun.
Helsing offers Anna his help to stop Dracula, but she says she doesn't need his help. He laughs, stating, yeah, I can see that. She says the only reason they had trouble today was that they were attacked during the day. They had never done that before, so they were caught off guard. She points out that for some reason, they are desperate to finish off her family. Helsing asks, why now of all times? Anna mentions that her father has been trying to figure that out, always combing through their family archives in the tower. Helsing calls out to Carl and tells him to start searching the tower for answers. He tells Anna she needs to stay alive until Dracula is killed. And she goes on saying that if she doesn't kill him, who will? Helsing points out that if she goes now, she'll be outmaneuvered, and she can't see in the dark. He tells her in the morning they will hunt and they will do it together. After a bit of back and forth and a little banter, he sprays her in the face with some kind of knockout gas and puts her in a room. Like, I know he's doing it for her own good. He wants to wait till day, but
He was just very comfortable spraying her in the face.
come on, it's not his first time.
Right, and you're kind of like, oh, Van Helsing.
What are we doing?
That's low, man.
She wakes up in the middle of the night, realizes what Helsing did. She storms out of her room searching for Helsing. Seeing no one around, this part was weird, she grabs a mace and a lantern, and she investigates the dark hallways, only to find a window left ajar. She closes the window and sees a giant bloody water footprint. I can't tell if it's bloody or watery.
I sort of assumed that it was both.
Because it's raining outside.
Yeah, so I sort of assumed when
It's
I saw it.
It's like a bloody footprint, but it has water all around it.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, and he's in the process of grossly ripping off all of his human skin. So I assumed that because he's been ripping off his skin, maybe that he got wet and it
Got
watered
bloody.
down the blood.
Yeah.
In this movie, there's some moments where they just don't necessarily follow up or add up together. Or maybe we're just analyzing too much and you're meant to be a little drunk when you watch this movie.
Yeah, I don't think they expected people to hyper analyze every scene, so maybe they just did things a little casually. Anna grabs a conveniently placed gun that's just right on the mantle right next to her. Searching around, she looks up to find a werewolf, which growls at her. She fires off a shot and then runs down the hall. She runs into her brother, who's babbling about Dracula's secret, and he doesn't quite get it out. He keeps trying to say it, and then before you know it, he's transforming back into a werewolf. His transformation's kind of wild, and Lacey mentioned this briefly, but he climbs up the wall and is facing her and then starts ripping off his human skin to reveal furry skin underneath.
And he is Exorcist level climbing up this wall, backwards.
Spider-Man crawling up the wall, but while facing you. So instead of turning around and crawling up the wall, he's looking you in the eye and he's crawling backwards up the wall, which to my knowledge, werewolves don't do that.
No.
Now they can climb the normal way, but they definitely don't do this twisty contortion walking up the wall.
Exorcist, demon possessed, wall walking situation is what is happening. It's werewolf prints you see in the bloody water. So was he a werewolf when he snuck in and then he turned back into her brother and then he rips off his skin and becomes the werewolf a second time?
I think so. I think he comes in as a werewolf because when she grabs the gun, she hears a growl. She looks up and he's just up hanging out in the ceiling. She shoots, runs away, and then runs into her brother. So I'm thinking he was chasing after her and then transformed really quick. But they've shown that the transformations kind of take time. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's kind of weird that she rounds a corner and bam, her brother's there.
Well, and the first werewolf they caught was during the day. So I'm sort of assuming that once you're transformed, you're just kind of stuck.
Yeah, they kind of allude to it a little bit, but they don't really go into detail. But they talk about how after your first full moon, Dracula can completely control you. And so you need to do something about being a werewolf before that. So you'll just periodically change at random bouts. And it doesn't even seem to be linked to nighttime. He just randomly will transform or urges will come over him and he'll just mutate.
I don't understand why Dracula has any sway over werewolves at all. The legends don't.
Canonically, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
Yeah, more questions than good answers, that's for sure. She runs into her brother, who's babbling about Dracula's secret. He never quite spits out what that is before transforming back into a werewolf. Carl comes in and makes a comment about it smelling like wet dog. Oh, sorry, I skipped a part.
Yes, we were at the Exorcist wall crawl.
Oh, yeah. He starts climbing the wall while facing her, rips off his human skin to reveal the furry skin underneath, and then he completes his transformation. Helsing comes in, and Vulcan escapes through a window. Carl comes in and makes a comment about it smelling like wet dog. Carl is the comedic relief in this movie, and he executes very well.
He looks like his name is Carl, too.
Yeah, he does.
Like, if you were to meet him in, public, you're not expecting him to come up in something and say, like, it's Andrea. He looks like a Carl.
Yeah. Helsing, walking through the village, runs into, I can only describe as the, like, head townsperson. He's the same guy that was, like, talking to him earlier in the movie. He's the same guy that at the front of the mob that was hunting down Frankenstein. And he's also the guy measuring Carl for a casket. Now he's in the middle of town, hanging out in a casket that's leaned up against the wall. He mentions that the Wolfman hasn't killed him yet. And I kind of wish they explained a little bit more about who this guy is, because I can't tell if he's working for Dracula or if he's just a random guy in town who just likes to fuck with people. They don't really talk about him anymore after this scene.
Right? Does he have significance, or is he just your average local creeper?
I feel like he might have had a bigger role and that it got cut back when they cut the movie down, because the movie was originally like 3 hours long and they had to cut parts out of it, and so it got cut down to like 2 hours.
Maybe that explains some of the moments where we're going.
There's some inconsistencies.
Yeah.
It
would explain a lot, actually, because there's multiple moments where you're like, wait, I thought they didn't do this. Why are they doing that now?
Yeah, there was quite a few parts where they go back and forth like that are a little confusing, and it would make more sense that there was more to the movie and they had to cut some parts out. He mentions that the Wolfman hasn't killed him yet. He starts digging a grave after some back and forth. Just as Helsing turns his back, he swings a shovel at Helsing, who catches it, and before anything else, the werewolf jumps out of nowhere to attack. Helsing takes out a gun to shoot, but Anna stops him. Vulcan gets away. They argue a bit, but ultimately she thinks Dracula has a cure that can turn her brother back. They kind of have a heart-to-heart, and he agrees to help her look for her brother. Back in Frankenstein's laboratory, we see Igor starting up the equipment. They're about to start an experiment. Wandering in the forest, Helsing and Anna are following the trail to Vulcan. They find some shedded fur, and Anna points out that werewolves only shed right before the full moon, and the curse completely consumes them. Back in the lab, Vulcan transformed back into a human, much the same way he turned, by ripping off all his fur and revealing human skin underneath. He pleads to leave his sister out of this, and then they remove a corpse from the experiment table. When Vulcan looks at the corpse, he notices a family necklace and realizes that it's his father's body. Dracula comments that he hopes he will survive with werewolf serum coursing through his veins. Helsing and Anna make it into Frankenstein's castle, and they come across some of Dracula's minions. Anna overhears them talking about using her brother for an experiment. She tries to run off, but Helsing catches her, saying there's no hope for her brother, but there is hope to stop Dracula from hurting more people. Dracula and Igor start the experiment. Helsing and Anna wander into a room full of hanging sacks. Helsing thinks that these are the offspring of Dracula and his wives. Commenting on Dracula having 3 gorgeous wives for centuries, there's no way they didn't do anything.
I take major issue with the design of these vampire baby sack things.
You can't tell me that even in her creepy vampire banshee form that they just pushed out these little sacks.
Right? And there's hundreds of them.
Yeah, and apparently this is only like one batch from one wife. So like there's other stashes of these batches of,
and they're huge. I could understand maybe eggs, I guess, a little bit more. Like,
they're still human-like. I just think it's baffling that these things are even...
I just don't understand the character design that went behind the vampire babies at all, because they don't look like the banshee form. They don't look like the human form.
They look like imps.
Nothing lays sacks like this except bugs.
Yeah, it's...
And even bugs lay sacks proportionally sized to their bodies.
Yeah, these don't make sense at all, because these things are huge.
It's not the main plot of the movie, but I do think that it was a creative misstep.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense why a vampire would have egg sacs that hang from the ceiling, which is, I think, is stupid.
Well, no, and it just, like I said, I would still be skeptical of eggs, but at least feasibly, and I do think visually, if you walk into a room and there's thousands of like little egg pods, would be more scary.
Agreed. I mean, we saw what happens in Godzilla.
Yes.
The original one, that would make me shit my pants.
Or, you know what, any of the Alien franchise movies.
Yep, same.
Which I take major issue of. You guys know if you listen to our earlier things. If you see a sticky sack, pod, egg-looking item, if it's pulsating, if it's glowing, if it's wet, don't fucking poke it.
Especially if it's the size of a fucking human. That thing is bigger than you.
And we will see that in many of those other movies, Van Helsing pokes it.
Yep. I mean, it's not his fault they start hatching, but he does poke it.
He rips it open and starts digging around inside there. This is how everybody in the Alien franchises goes down. Don't poke it. Don't reach your hand in there. That's how you lose a hand.
Yeah, well, I wonder what's going on in here. Let's take a look.
You don't deserve to have the hand if you stick it inside that thing.
Yep. Anna remarks that they are all dead, but that makes sense on account of them being dead themselves.
No, it doesn't.
She's referring to the vampires, I'm assuming. Like, oh, vampires, when they birth, they'll probably come out dead. So all of the, like, vampire babies are all dead.
If you're dead, you can't ovulate, and you can't create whatever this thing is. It does not make sense. I disagree with Anna.
I agree. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
This was, in general, a creative misstep.
Yep. Helsing thinks that these experiments are probably him trying to bring them all to life.
Wild leap.
Yeah, I don't understand how he made that connection immediately. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
I would assume, if anything, if I found a vampire experimenting and these vampires, some vampire lores, depending on the book or movie you're watching, aren't necessarily sensitive to light. Some are. The traditional lore is that they are sensitive to sunlight. If I discovered a vampire experimenting, I would assume my first thing is maybe they're trying to find a way to create a synthetic blood product, a la True Blood, or perhaps they're trying to find a way to beat the sunlight curse. I wouldn't think bring back my undead pod babies.
Yeah, usually if they're doing any kind of experiments, it's to get rid of one of their weaknesses or to find a sustainable food source.
Which, I mean, problem solved. We created modern medicine, just moved to Miami.
Yep. You could literally just open a blood bank and then just never give away any of the blood.
You know what? As long as you don't kill the person when you bite them, depending once again on the vampire lore, there are so many kinky bitches out there, you would have an endless supply.
I'm telling you, there are people who would be down to be just food. That would be their thing.
Especially if you put them up in like a nice house situation and once a month.
Like, just take care of their needs. And if you only have to drink blood like once a week, like, go live it up. Just get a few homies.
All you'd have to do is provide health care. We live in America, if anybody's listening. You provide them bitches health care, a nice, safe place to live, rent-free. You'd have all the blood you need.
Yep.
Now, if you have to kill them, it's not a sip-and-play situation. If they must die in order for you to eat, little harder.
You're not wrong. In the laboratory, we see Vulcan being electrocuted during that experiment process.
He didn't even try to, like, run away.
No, he didn't. In fact, he came right back to Dracula.
Which I didn't understand why he was coming back or why he allowed himself to be strapped down.
I don't either. I think, okay, they allude to this a little bit, but he maybe was thinking that if he comes back to Dracula and sacrifices himself, Dracula will leave his sister alone.
Maybe.
But he's got to know that that's not how that works. Like, no villain ever is going to be like, oh, yeah, go ahead and sacrifice yourself. I promise I won't touch your sister. Now let me kill you. And then I'm going to do whatever I want. Like, I don't know. I don't think a lot of thought was going through that
I couldn't
process.
tell if he had been compelled for some reason to go back or if he just went back. Because
they do say that Dracula has, like, some kind of control over the werewolves, but I thought that was after the first full moon. Then he gets control of them. At least they say that a few times.
Same. Was very confused about why this man willingly went back, allowed himself to be strapped down by the minions, and then electrocuted and tortured. I mean, once you're strapped down, but still, he didn't put up a fight.
So they start the experiment. Vulcan gets electrocuted, and then they begin flipping switches, which sends Shocks down into the sack room. The sack room.
I think probably the nursery is a better way.
Oh, nursery's probably a better way to say that. Helsing starts to peel apart one of the sacks. This is where he was reaching his hand in. When a creepy little hand and a head poke out of one of them. They look like little imps flying around. Helsing and Anna quickly escape. The imps fly up to Dracula and his two remaining wives. He tells his wives to teach them how to feed. And they get thrown and fly away. Helsing goes down and starts blasting. Dracula takes offense to having his children shot at and comes for Helsing.
That's fair.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I get mad if people start shooting at my children.
That's fair, but at the same time, you did have over 1,000, so you
probably stand to lose a few.
It's kind of like that opening scene of Finding Nemo where he's like, this half will be Marlin Jr. and this half will be Coral Jr. And she's like, I like Nemo. You're just not going to name 1,000+ babies individually.
No, it's not practical. Back in town, Carl is the first to notice all of the baby vamps flying in. He goes to warn somebody. His little words, I should probably warn somebody. Dracula taunts Helsing and slowly walks around trying to find him. Anna sneaks into the laboratory where Vulcan is still being shocked like crazy. The townspeople finally notice all the baby vamps. They start dragging and carrying people off. They're pretty much all being eaten alive. Dracula is still looking for Helsing and is surprised when Helsing stabs a stake into his heart. To Helsing's surprise, Dracula doesn't die and calls him Gabriel for some reason. Back with Anna, she gets noticed by some of Dracula's minions who start chasing her. She jumps onto some hanging ropes and they follow. She cuts the rope and Dracula's minions that were following her on the rope all fall into a vat of liquid. She continues to climb up. Dracula pulls the stake out of his chest and questions Helsing about how long it's been. Maybe what? Give or take 300 or 400 years? Then he notices that he doesn't remember. He speaks of Van Helsing's history, trained by monks in Tibet, protected by the Holy Order, the greatest hunter, yet hunted by all. He claims they have a ton of history, and he keeps calling him Gabriel. Dracula questions him about his nightmares, the dreams of ancient battles past. Back with Anna, she finally finds Velkin and tries to unstrap him. He begins to transform, and he tells her not to unstrap him, but she doesn't listen until he clutches her by the neck and he starts holding her up. Dracula offers to help Helsing refresh his memory. Helsing hands him a crucifix, which burns and eventually melts in his hand. But then it shows no damage on Dracula at all. He looks at Helsing and reintroduces himself as Vladislaus Dracula, born in 1422, murdered in 1462. We get more scenes of townspeople being massacred by the little imps. Carl is doing his best to help the people. The imps eventually start bursting like balloons. The wives of Dracula start screaming and start heading back to the castle. Dracula, distracted by the screams, Helsing runs to a service elevator, cuts the rope, and speeds up to the roof. He meets back up with Anna, shoots an insane grappling hook, jumps off just as Velkin reaches the roof, transformed into a werewolf. Velkin falls into the river below, and Helsing and Anna make it to the other side. Back in town, as the townspeople are cleaning up after the aftermath, one of the women Carl saved asked him how she could repay him. He whispers something in her ear, and she rebuts, "You can't do that. You're a monk." He points out again that he's not a monk, he's only a friar.
I don't know anything about the Catholic Church because I was not raised Catholic, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I feel like that's wrong. That he, in fact, is probably not supposed to mess around as a friar.
From my research, friars are basically pastors that are more front-facing, and that they go from town to town and live off donations. So they do all their preaching like outside the church.
So probably supposed to still be celibate.
Technically, there's no rule saying that they have to be, but if you're following regular tenets, you typically are supposed to be celibate unless you're married. So, but I mean, Carl's gonna do what Carl wants to do. Low key, Carl's probably a freak because instead of saying it out loud, he like whispered it to her, and I was like, he probably asked for some freaky stuff instead of just your regular stuff. Otherwise, you'd be like, yo, let's do it.
So we don't think it was missionary.
Probably not. Back in Frankenstein's castle, it seems that the experiment was a failure. And the answers are with Frankenstein and his grave. Velkin, still in his werewolf form, climbs back up to the castle to Dracula. Dracula orders him to hunt Anna and Helsing down. Anna is bitching at Helsing, saying how they've already tried everything. Helsing tells her about everything that he tried, the holy water, stakes, the clubbing, or the crucifix. Nothing worked. Helsing complains that he could have used that information that they had already tried all that a little earlier.
I don't think there was time. So this seems sort of one of those things that's... Because, okay, they had the original vampire sister wives attacked, right? They go back to the castle. He then knocks her out. At what point in this was she supposed to down low all of the ways they have tried and failed to kill Dracula?
I agree. And regardless, though, Anna ends up apologizing to him about her brother, more specifically, saying that she should have known that that thing is not her brother anymore. As they're talking, the floor of the building that they're in collapses out from under them. Back with Carl, he wakes up screaming about vampires. He takes a sec to recollect where he is and what he's been doing. He notices the girl that he slept with the night before.
Which is what he's been doing.
Yep. And after grinning, he puts his hand against the wall and triggers a switch that flips the wall into like a mural or like a painting that's inscribed with the words, "Even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf. When the wolfbane blooms and the moon is shining bright, or crave another's blood, when the sun goes down and his body takes to flight." I'm assuming they're referencing a werewolf and a vampire. Then the picture starts to animate. It shows two knights that are fighting each other, then transform into a werewolf and a vampire. Helsing and Anna wake up in a cave. They walk up the nearby slope. Helsing starts to inspect the tracks that are left on the ground. Starts describing what would have made them. He said 360 pounds, 9 feet tall, and 3 copper teeth. That last part confused Anna, and she says, "How do you know that he has 3 copper teeth?" And then Helsing points out that he's right behind her. He knocks Helsing over, and Anna recognizes him as Frankenstein's monster. He yells, grabs Anna, and asks her what wrong has he ever done. He blames humans for causing the death of his father, and that they're the real monsters. Helsing slams into him, knocks Anna over out of his hands. He then is electrocuted and shocked back because Monster, for some reason, has like some type of electrical field around him when his head is open. He had like knocked him and his head fell off or like to the side.
Yeah, you can sort of see his like green
Brain thing.
pulse.
Yeah.
It's a little gross looking.
Helsing uses his crossbow to shoot him in the back. Anna gets away and grabs the gun. Helsing stops her just when she's about to shoot him. Monster screams, "If you care about humankind, you should, in fact, kill me, because I'm the key to Dracula's machine. Life for Dracula's children." Helsing thinks that they all died the night before. Monster tells them that it was only from one birthing of one bride. Monster tells them that they probably all died, and only when he himself is in the machine can they have eternal life. He tells them that there are thousands of those sacks in his castle.
For someone who tells them that they need to kill him, he sure initially fought back pretty hard. Wouldn't you just not and just let Van Helsing off you right away?
Yeah, but I mean, he was still a little butthurt about like the whole like they killed my father thing. What's crazy to me is that he still had enough humanity in him to like, it's better if I sacrifice myself than let Dracula get a hold of me. But I think a part of that is also because he doesn't want Dracula to be able to take advantage of his father's work. Anna resolves to kill the monster. Helsing stops her and gives a speech about how his life has been devoted to destroying evil things and evil people. But he can sense that while the monster was created by evil, he himself is not evil. He also tells Anna that maybe Monster has the key to killing Dracula. A werewolf pops his head into the little cave that they're in and gets away. Anna freaks out because now they know Monster's still alive, and Helsing says if they can get him to Rome, they can protect him. They cut back to town with Carl explaining everything he discovered about the painting in the castle. Helsing leads him to a carriage with Monster inside, and they take off down the trail. They head all the way back through the forest, across a snowy mountain, and back into a foggy forest. Helsing can hear noises in the fog. Not long after, he gets snatched off the carriage by one of Dracula's wives. He shakes himself free and lands onto the horses, but the carriage is heading towards a broken bridge. He tries to get back onto the coach's seat, but gets knocked back by one of the vampires. The horses pull the carriage over the chasm. The horses make it, but the carriage doesn't quite make it. Right on the edge, it falls back. The vampires swoop down and attempt to save Monster from the falling carriage. Little did they know that the carriage was empty the whole time. The only thing in the carriage are a bunch of stakes. When the carriage crashes, it explodes and launches stakes everywhere, killing one of the remaining vampires. Anna is driving another carriage that has Monster and Carl. Helsing manages to catch back up with him, and then they get attacked by a werewolf. Something causes the top of the carriage to catch on fire, and Monster freaks out because of the fire. I mean, come on, the guy probably really has some mad PTSD. He literally was surrounded by fire in the little windmill.
I too. Not a fan of fire and would probably react similarly.
Right? Who wouldn't? I mean, it's fire. I feel like humans would definitely freak out by fire. Carl has to drag Monster off the carriage. The werewolf lunges at Helsing, who turns around and starts blasting with his pistols. It cuts to the next day with Anna wandering through the woods. She finds her brother transformed back into human form, where he apologizes and then passes away. She sees Helsing and blames him for her brother's death, but she quickly notices that he's been bitten. She backs away and gets knocked out by the last remaining wife of Dracula. She flies away with Anna. Carl and Monster catch up with Helsing as they walk to the nearest town. They get confronted by Dracula's wife. I think her name is like Alyssa or something like that. Oh, she says Dracula proposes a trade. Anna for the monster. They agree to trade at a masquerade ball that's in town. Monster is about to attack Helsing for just giving him up like that when he notices the bite. He mocks Helsing, saying, "Now you will become that which you hunted." Helsing shoots a blow dart and tranks Monster. They seal Monster in a mausoleum in a graveyard. Carl quips, "Are you sure he can't get out?" Helsing says, "Not without help from the dead." And ominously, as they're walking away, we get movement from a grave. At the masquerade ball, we get a close-up of an opera singer singing with the attendees all dancing and trapeze artists swinging around in the ceiling. Dracula and Anna are dancing and kind of making out at the same time. Dracula mocks Anna, asking how it feels to be a puppet on a string. Anna tells him that she refuses to be traded. He laughs and said, "I have no intention of trading you." He knows Helsing, and he doesn't think he'll agree to the trade anyways. They continue to dance, and we see Helsing and Carl on a balcony making plans. Dracula starts trying to convince Anna to be his next bride. Helsing and Carl start the plan. Just when Dracula is about to turn Anna, Helsing drops in, lights Dracula on fire, swoops in and snatches up Anna and lands on a balcony. All of the guests stop and watch Dracula as he calls out to Gabriel over and over. Igor comes in with Monster strapped to a giant wooden board. Dracula then announces to the entire dinner party that man on the balcony is actually Helsing. All the guests, turns out, are vampires. They all hiss and bare their fangs. Helsing and Anna quickly escape. Carl claims he knows where the magma bomb that he had in the beginning is finally for. Helsing tells him, we don't have time, and they jump through a window. Carl drops the bomb as they're heading out, and it explodes through the entire building. Essentially, he drops the sun on these bitches. All of the vampires get vaporized by the little bomb that explodes, and it's just literally like a flashbang through the entire building. The only one who seemed to have survived was Dracula, his minions, and last remaining wife.
If I was being hunted by 1,000 weird vampire ant babies, it would have occurred to me that I had the sun in my pocket. I think I would have thought of it sooner.
Well, he didn't know what it did.
He knew what he did. He just didn't know what it was for. He made that point in the very beginning.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah, so he knows it's the sun. He just wasn't sure in what scenario would be best to use that in.
Well, he was describing it like, oh, you could use it to blind your enemies. I don't think he realized that it had the same like magnitude as like the sun to a vampire. Otherwise, a lot of this could have been solved much earlier.
I think he did, and I think that there's just bad continuity within this movie.
Also possible. The entire building lights up like day. We see Monster strapped to a boat with Igor. Helsing attempts to catch up, but he gets cut off by a gate. Helsing yells to Monster that he will find him and he'll set him free. Carl tells Helsing it doesn't matter. He spoke with the people from Rome and they told him that even if they manage to kill Dracula, they have to kill Monster as well. So he can't be used against humanity. Helsing has a bit of a crash out moment here. Oh yeah, I mentioned he got bitten. Apparently he's going to turn into a werewolf now. A part of his werewolf nature comes out and he almost kills Carl. He manages to reel it back in and get himself together. They're making their way back to Frankenstein's castle, but all of the equipment is gone. They think they must have carried it all away. They head back to Anna's castle and Carl goes over everything he's discovered so far. He tells them that everything started with Dracula, who was murdered, and now he briefly mentions that the person who killed him was the left hand of God or something. He's hinting at Gabriel being an angel. He was able to find out that Dracula was actually the son of Anna's ancestor. This is the part about the castle part that I was talking about. So Dracula is apparently the son of Anna's ancestor. He then goes back to talking about the painting that he witnessed come to life. He talks about Dracula having made a covenant with the devil and being given a new life after he died. The only way to sustain that life was by drinking blood. Anna's ancestor, having sired this evil, went to Rome to ask for forgiveness. That's when the bargain was made in return for eternal salvation for his entire family. They needed to kill Dracula. Anna chimes in, even as evil as he was, her ancestor couldn't just kill his own son. Carl says yes, but he did banish him to an icy fortress, pushed him through a door from which there was no return. And the devil gave him wings. When your ancestor couldn't kill him, he left behind clues. He then activates the switch trigger that flips the wall and shows the painting. Anna thinks her father must have been looking for that door, and that's why he was cooped up in this study. Helsing has a eureka moment and goes back to the giant map in the study that shows all of Transylvania. He thinks that the door might have been in front of them the entire time. He thinks the map is the door, and her father just didn't know how to open it. Anna says if it were a door, her father would have opened it a long time ago. Carl pores over the inscriptions on the door, but notices a piece is missing. And it's the exact same shape as the piece that Van Helsing saw in Rome. Helsing pulls out that same script and hands it over to Carl, and Carl places it on the missing piece on the wall. After he finishes the inscription, the entire map starts to glow and the map disappears. And you can see the reflections where the map was. It's now turned into a giant mirror. Helsing tries to put his hand up against it and his hand goes through it and comes back covered in snow. He grabs a torch and resolves to go through it. Helsing walks out into the winter landscape where it's snowing. Anna also walks through with a torch, and they figure out that they're finally at Dracula's castle. Carl follows, gets scared, tries to go back, and then bounces back. The group walks up to the giant castle doors, and Helsing, using his werewolf powers, jumps up the walls and enters the castle. As they walk into the grand hall, the entire ceiling is covered with bat sacks. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Egg pods.
Yeah, egg pods, bat sacks, all the same. As they walk into the grand hall, the entire ceiling is covered in bat sacks. Igor comes out of the side room complaining and is surprised that the crew found him. Helsing pins him to a wall, and just before they call him, they hear Monster call out. They look through some bars that are over to the side and see Monster being suspended by some chains. Helsing tries to break the bars to get to him. Monster tells him that there actually is a cure to the werewolf curse. He tells them to find it and then get out. Helsing then ponders why Dracula would have a cure to the werewolfism. Carl thinks back to the painting and he theorizes that werewolves might be the only thing that can kill Dracula. Helsing threatens Igor and tells him to find the antidote with Carl and Anna. He tells them to kill him if they can't find the antidote by midnight. They make out a little bit and then head out to find the antidote.
To be clear, Helsing and Anna make out a little bit.
Nah, he was making out with Igor. What are you talking about? Helsing heads to the rebuilt laboratory. Dracula has monsters trapped down and lifted into a thunderstorm. Helsing, sprinting up a tower, jumps into a chain that's connected to Monster and he's trying to climb to the top of the tower to free Monster. Igor leads Anna and Carl to the cure, and it's encased in, at first I thought it was ice, but it's actually like some kind of liquid that's very similar to like amber, with like a mosquito and amber. It's literally just being suspended there. Anna goes to actually grab the cure, and Igor knocks Carl into the room, and he traps them both in there. Helsing makes it to the laboratory and starts knocking out Dracula's henchmen, and then continuing to climb the tower to get to Monster. Anna and Carl are debating who should grab the antidote when the last wife of Dracula makes an appearance. Anna knocks over the giant jar that held the antidote and splashes it all over Dracula's wife. She starts screaming, and I think some kind of like acidic substance was actually holding the cure in place. Anna grabs a section of the jar that still has some of the liquid and throws it onto the gate, which promptly melts away. Carl escapes while Anna gets caught and thrown back into the last room. Anna tells Carl to keep going, and then she climbs up a wall and grabs a torch out of a sconce. And I believe her name is Alara, is the last wife's name, because then they start bantering back and forth. Alara spins around and turns into like mist and snuffs out all of the torches in the room, including the one in Anna's hand, and then vanishes. Back with Carl, he gets intercepted by Igor, who starts attacking him. Helsing, back on top of the tower, is unstrapping Monster while lightning is striking, activating the machine, and start the process of waking up Dracula's children. He says one more bolt and they should all awaken. And just as Helsing finishes unstrapping Monster, Dracula swoops in and knocks him off the tower. Monster attempts to leave when he notices he's still chained at the legs. The last bolt of lightning strikes and wakes up Dracula's children completely. Monster falls off the tower and manages to catch a chain and swings over to the bridge that Carl and Igor are fighting on. The chain goes across the walkway. Carl sees the chain coming and ducks, while Igor, who's not paying attention, gets knocked over the edge. He falls into the darkness. Anna searches the dark room trying to locate Alara. Alara pounces out of the darkness and knocks her over. Carl sees Monster hanging by the chain, and Monster asks for help. Carl is in a dilemma because Monster is supposed to die, but Monster says he wants to live. Carl says fuck it and helps him back up. Alara grabs onto Anna and chokes her out and awkwardly licks her. This whole part was really weird. Carl releases the chain that Monster was stuck on, and Monster swings free right into the room that Alara and Anna are fighting in. Helsing and Dracula square up. Dracula tells Helsing it's too late, his children are alive. Helsing saying, that just means I have to kill you. The clock strikes midnight, and then Helsing transforms. Dracula tries to get him to join his side, and then transforms into like a bat monster. They slug it out for like a few minutes, and while all of that's happening, Monster manages to stop Alara from killing Anna, and he yells to her to help Helsing, and while he tries to stop Alara. Carl, who's stuck on the walkway, can't get to where Helsing is. Anna swings by on a chain and tells Carl to throw... This part was so fucking stupid. Anna's on a chain swinging, and is like, hey Carl, throw me the antidote. So if Carl whiffs, or she doesn't catch it, Van Helsing's just fucked.
No more antidote.
Yeah. So I thought this whole part was dumb. But girl got golden hands, manages to catch it after Carl throws it. She grabs it, or she catches it, and then swings back on top of the castle walls, and then gets knocked out of the air by Alara. Dracula and Helsing are still fighting, and Dracula gets whooped here. Helsing has the upper hand for most of this. And then, switchbacks to Alara, who corners Anna again. Carl throws Anna the silver stake, and Anna manages to kill her. The really funny part here is that Alara is like monologuing, and Anna's like, yeah, next time you should just kill your target instead of like talking or playing with your food.
That's what we learned from the Incredibles movie.
Yep.
You never monologue.
Never thought about villains monologuing until I watched that. And I was like, he's right. Villains monologue way too much.
You got me monologuing.
Yep. Megamind talks about it to you. He was like, oh my God, he's monologuing. Or the hero guy is like, yada, 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 yada. It's always monologue. All right. Helsing gets a chokehold on Dracula, but then transforms back. He then jumps away, and Dracula starts monologuing here about how he was killed by Helsing, calling him Gabriel again, and how it must be hard being the left hand of God. Helsing transforms again and rips out Dracula's throat. All his children explode at the same moment, and Anna, who has the antidote, is trying to get to Helsing and then to stab him. Helsing attacks her, and Carl tries to stab him. Helsing stops him, holds up Anna, and screams. He transforms back into the human, so it looks like Anna managed to get the serum back into him. It cost her life. They cut to Hannah being presented on a pyre, and Helsing lighting the pyre, while Carl reads her last rites. We see Monster rowing away on a raft over the side of the cliff going downriver. Helsing stares up into the sky and we see the clouds part and what looks like Anna's face in the clouds. Very like Mufasa, remember? And the sky closes back up. Call comforts Helsing and then they ride off into the sunset. And then the credits roll. God, that movie was way longer than I remember.
Yeah.
It's very long.
I didn't love it.
It was okay.
All right. Anyways, that is our recap of Van Helsing. If you are interested or if it happens to be a campy favorite for you, embrace the month of October and have a watch. If you're interested, stick around and we're about to go over our Monsterverse moment. In this Monsterverse moment, we are going to be diving in a little bit around the vampire lore. And not the history of vampires so much, although that is very interesting and that is a deep well. What we're going to be talking about is one of the medical conditions that fed into the lore of vampires, and that is a condition known as pellagra. What is pellagra? Pellagra is a vitamin deficiency, a series of symptoms that are characterized as that disease, and it is a deficiency caused by a lack of niacin or vitamin B3, and it has symptoms that are very similar to what would be attributed to a vampire. One of the most striking symptoms of pellagra is a sensitivity to sunlight. People with pellagra will blister and burn after even brief exposure to the sun. So you cover up your skin, you hide indoors. A feature of this disease are something called the 4Ds: dermatitis, diarrhea, dementia, and death.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, the 4Ds, which is not the 4Ds that most people are after, for the record.
No.
In traditional Mesoamerican cultures, people treated corn or maize with alkaline substances, typically a lime wash, and treating maize in a lime wash activates essentially niacin. If you don't do this, even though corn contains that mineral, our body is not able to absorb it. So you can eat as much as you want, but you're never going to absorb that very needed vitamin.
And so it'll build up?
And so because corn is easy to grow and it's easy to store, it's easy to grind up and turn into other things, poor rural people in Eastern Europe were eating a lot of it. And not much else, not meats, not vegetables, not anything else. And so there was a little bit of a miscommunication, probably because Europeans didn't exactly treat Mesoamericans fantastically. And they skipped a step and they didn't do that lime wash. And so they were all developing this disease. So when you would get dermatitis, that sensitivity to the sun, and you would develop those blisters, you would get internal GI hemorrhaging, which would cause diarrhea. You would face dementia. You'd be wandering around, attacking people, biting them perhaps, and then you would die, right?
For obvious reasons, rumors might start to spread, and then when you play a few games of telephone, it becomes way more sensational than it actually was.
It was not totally uncommon in this particular era for people to dig up those dead bodies. Maybe that body didn't look like you expected it to. Perhaps it was appearing bloody. Well, it appeared bloody because obviously that was a vampire who had risen and fed on the next victim who just recently died. And the reason that they appeared bloody is because pellagra in particular causes intestinal hemorrhaging. And then, as most of us know, unfortunately, a symptom of death is that your bowels loosen. And if you've been hemorrhaging internally via your intestines,
a lot of the blood's going to come out.
Yes, it is, which is pretty gross because the symptom is severe dermatitis, and that first resembles a sunburn and then over time becomes raw, cracked, scaly, even can bleed. This chronic inflammation and damage leaves a mark even after death. So then you add your general decomposition and bloating, that's going to look a lot worse and a lot grosser. And then because niacin is a nutrient for DNA repair and cellular energy, its deficiency leads to systematic inflammation. And so just in general, your body's going to look a little different when it starts to decompose when you're facing that. And when your gums start to pull back from your teeth as your body rots, you're going to be bloody. You're going to look like you're going to have fangs. It might not be the wildest leap in logic to think that's a vampire, let's burn it.
I guess your canines would look more prominent if your lips were all pulled back.
And you're having general rotting and decomposition of a body. Science wasn't great back then.
I mean, and there's no recording of most of this stuff, so people were just telling other people. They're like, oh yeah, their teeth. They had like these fangs. It was crazy. They're like, and you say that a few times and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And then Game of Telephone keeps going and it just gets worse and worse. I can see that being a thing.
Yeah. One of the big symptoms of pellagra is something called a Casal's necklace. And that could,
awful.
yeah, I'll show you a picture here in a second. It's a ring around your neck that looks very blistered and just sort of rashy and sore. And so that could quite easily be taken as a mark of the cursed or a mark of the devil, right?
Okay.
Here's a picture of a Casal's necklace.
Oh, I could see people freaking out.
It looks really painful. It looks bad.
Well, and you have people that are already like freaking out about the smallest little things. All you're doing is confirming their worst fears.
So you have these perfect collection of symptoms that would really lead you if you are,
Of the superstitious nature.
you're in a superstitious nature, you're very religious, you have a lack of education, a lack of health care, very malnourished. It could very much lead you to believe that this is, these are vampires. And it led to a lot of the craze because vampires sort of hunting came and went around periods of famine and disease, especially.
Oh, of course. People are already in a worse mental state and they're kind of jumping at shadows. And this is just another shadow.
Okay, so we're actually going to fast forward a little bit here and we're going to talk about when people actually kind of started to figure out that this maybe wasn't vampirism. It isn't leprosy because for a long time, even after we move forward in time a little bit and we aren't thinking, oh my gosh, vampires, and these aren't vampire victims. And people are still thinking that this is a contagious disease, that this is leprosy. Dementia is a symptom of this. And so it was one of those things where people definitely didn't want to touch it or be involved with it.
Leprosy was like the disease for a hot minute where people were like terrified because leprosy is contagious, right?
It is. So it is technically contagious, but it's really hard to contract it.
How is it passed?
So it's leprosy is also known as Hansen's disease, and it's transmitted through prolonged close contact with an untreated person who has the disease. It's a bacteria, and it is spread through respiratory droplets, nasal secretions, or open skin lesions into your open skin.
To sneeze in someone's mouth is what you're saying. Or like rub your wounds with someone else's wounds.
And so it's really not caught through casual contact. You're not going to catch leprosy because you sat next to someone and because you shook their hand. You're not going to catch leprosy that way.
Yeah, but the paranoia back then of any kind of illness being passed, people just assume because it's not like they did experiments to figure out, hey, this doesn't pass as easy as we thought it did. So people just assume, they just immediately segregated anyone with leprosy. You
and
throw them on an island or something.
Nowadays, leprosy is curable because we have antibiotics and other modern medicines.
We have the technology.
We do. Pellagra was initially called Asturian leprosy. Pellagra outbreaks occurred in regions where maize was the dominant food crop, and maize was just an easy thing to store over winter or in bad times and just eat that. And if you weren't doing the alkaline treatments to make the niacin digestible, you were probably going to develop this disease.
It was a matter of when, not if.
Yeah. Some doctors thought that pellagra was maybe carried by an insect, similar to, malaria. Some doctors thought that it was passed through the body fluids of other people, being exposed to those. Think more like smallpox.
I wonder how long it took them to figure out it's very similar to scurvy, where it's like, no, you're just either deficient or too much of one type of thing.
Yes. We're going to fast forward here a little bit to the rural South, our homies. And there was a pretty nasty outbreak of pellagra deaths at that time, and it was killing thousands of people. The scientific community at that time thought that pellagra was maybe being caused by a germ or some unknown toxin that was in the corn that people were eating. They didn't actually realize that it was a nutritional deficiency. So we have a doctor, Dr. Joseph Goldberger, and he was assigned to study pellagra by the General Surgeon of the United States, and he was able to prove that it was linked to diet by observing the outbreaks of pellagra in orphanages, mental hospitals, and prisons. Doctors and nurses weren't developing this.
The staff were fine. It was only the people that were actually in these institutions that were showing signs.
Yes. And so what he ended up doing is he ended up theorizing, okay, the diet is what is different. By modifying the diet, he served in these institutions. He was able to show that the disease could be prevented. And then he also experimented on some prisoners because this was a different time.
They were a lot laxer with our rules.
They did volunteer, it sounds like.
You know how easy it is to volunteer a prisoner?
Different time, unfortunately. So he experimented on prisoners. In 1920s, he connected Pellagra to the corn-based diets of rural areas rather than infection, as contemporary medical opinion suggested. He believed that the root cause was the limited diet resulting from poverty, big shocker, and that the social reform would cure epidemic Pellagra. His efforts were not realized.
So well after his death, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's per usual. You're an idiot while you're alive, you're a genius after you're dead.
I think the worst thing, though, is that on his journey to prove that Pellagra doesn't kill people via contagious, is that him and a bunch of other, volunteers swallowed the body fluids of people who were infected to prove that it wouldn't infect them.
Ugh.
Right? Isn't that gross?
Sorry, I'm sure it was probably spit or something, but when you hear body fluids, you think all body fluids, and you're like, oh god, what were they doing?
Yeah, so even though he identified the importance of a Pellagra preventative factor and he did connect it to diet, he himself did not discover the specific nutrient. He didn't realize that it was niacin per se.
Because now they know what was causing it, even if they didn't know what was the actual problem.
I think that's a really interesting sort of take on vampirism, that it probably wasn't mythical creatures who made deals with the devil. It's just some poor people who were eating too much corn.
What started vampires? Corn?
Yeah.
Yep, it's corn.
Which I guess you could take it a step further, and it's actually white people messing around where they shouldn't be messing around.
Right? They fucked around and found out.
But yeah, he would have filth parties, is what they were called.
The fuck? Is this the doctor? Elaborate.
He would take scrapings off his patients' skin scabbies, as well as stool and urine samples, mix these with flour or cracker crumbs, forming little small pills.
Yo, old man was a freak.
People at this party would swallow them to basically see what would happen.
He's trying to...
Between 1930 and 1940, the United States recorded 3 million Pellagra cases.
Oh, that's wild.
With
Not surprised because of the diet. Corn is just so cheap.
Mm-hmm. With 100,000 fatalities. Well, and when you think about between 1900 and 1940 was in the United States, that's smack dab in the Great Depression.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were really hungry.
They were desperate. That's what they were.
Goldberger began investigating Pellagra in 1914. As I mentioned, he was shocked by how common the disease was in the South. After he saw how prevalent it was and visiting, various small towns across, I'm just going to assume the Appalachian Mountains, to him, the infectious disease theory just didn't make sense. And the biggest clue came from orphanages and insane asylums. If the staff isn't getting sick, but the people there are, then there's clearly not some sort of infectious
Yeah.
Especially back then, because
they were in really close proximity to each other, and they were pretty much...
Well, and they didn't have the same sort of...
safety guidelines
that we have today. They didn't have the same sort of latex gloves and,
They weren't washing their hands after everything.
So they didn't have the same kind of preventative measures that we have today. And staff was in constant contact. So if it truly was something that was being transmitted that easily, for it to cause that many sicknesses and deaths...
When you have hundreds of prisoners or inmates that are getting sick, but not a single one of the prison guards.
And so it occurred to him that their diet back then for poor Southerners was mostly made up of 3 foods. They're known as the 3 M's. So you have the D's of Pellagra and the 3 M's, which is ground meal, ground meal, particularly ground cornmeal, molasses for syrup, and dried meat, especially a type of pork called fatback. And for straight up, as anybody who's ever been poor, it's because they were cheap. So the 3 M's contained a lot of calories, so people weren't starving, but they weren't eating fresh vegetables or fresh meat or fresh dairy, so they were getting very little nutrients.
Yeah, no balance.
Goldberger selected a few orphanages and some asylums with the highest rates of Pellagra, and he started feeding the people there a better diet. Some fresh food, eggs, milk, peas, oatmeal.
If it made a difference.
Yeah, improvements were really good. The rates of Pellagra plummeted, and some asylum inmates saw their dementia improve so much that they were able to be discharged. 4th D, dementia. For his next experiment, Goldberger approached the governor of Mississippi and asked for access to a prison near Jackson, one with no reported cases of Pellagra.
Oh, God, he did not.
Yeah. You didn't want to be a prisoner in the South. You really didn't.
Yo, they just did whatever they wanted to.
So he isolated a dozen inmates in clean cells to eliminate, any prior potential infection. And he would then feed them the typical diet with the 3 M's and see whether or not they developed that pellagra. In exchange, the men would receive pardons when the experiment ended.
Yeah,
so
you don't have long to live, and you might be a walking zombie, but you'll be free.
you might get, intestinal hemorrhaging, diarrhea, and dementia, but you'll get your pardon.
I mean, that's no different than any of these like drug commercials we see on TV now.
Oh my gosh,
all the same side effects.
it's a drug for eczema, and you're like, but it may cause death.
Right?
And you're like,
Or
oh.
severe diarrhea. Please check your doctor to make sure you don't have any worms before you start taking this medicine.
Your pee might
Parasites.
burn like acid.
Yeah.
So in today's modern society, this is not the kind of thing that would be approved because
Cruel and unusual punishment.
it's considered, if you're dangling pardon in front of somebody, that's coercive and that they might not agree to your experiment under any other circumstance, but that they're desperate to get out. So anyways, he does this experiment in the spring of 1915. Big shocker, a Southern governor wasn't concerned about the welfare of his prisoners. Anyways, the prisoners are getting this very monotonous diet. After a few months go back, they're all weak, pale. They're getting the skin lesions. After a few months, they're all showing full-blown pellagra signs. A few could barely walk. One, allegedly, according to this article, asked to be shot.
Kill me now.
So after 7 months, each man got his pardon plus $5 and a new suit. And then apparently they all fled. Which, fair. Goldberger, however, very happy because in his mind, he's now proved that you can reverse pellagra through diet and that diet now causes pellagra. The orphanages and the insane asylums proved that it can be reversed, and then the prison experiment proved that it can be caused, right? He's fairly excited by this. He feels like he's proved that this is not a germ-based disease, but a disease caused by poverty.
Yep. This is what happens when you're poor. You turn into a vampire. Not the good kind either.
So unfortunately for him, publishing these findings made Southern doctors and politicians get up in their feelings. They felt a type of way about this.
Well, because it probably sounded like he was accusing them.
Because to them, he wasn't highlighting, it wasn't a clean clinical description of a disease. He was blaming them for their poverty and their systems that have been problematic since before the Civil War.
So they felt guilty because he was calling them out, and they didn't want that.
Yeah, so he was accused of the normal, faking his experiments, lying, trying to manipulate things.
He's a political plant.
And so they insisted basically that pellagra was an infectious disease and had nothing to do with poverty and malnutrition.
Yeah, this guy couldn't possibly be right, even though all this evidence is here.
Yeah. And so this reaction is why he decided to do the filth parties.
Oh, God.
So that he could do essentially something so extreme that no one could accuse him that he was faking this, I suppose. And that most of the people at these parties were doctors, it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like they were the protesty doctors who were like, we're going to fight the man by having filth parties.
People either ate the weird dough pills made from people goo, or they could receive nasal swabs or injections. Other diseases, cholera or typhus, those actions probably would have been a very serious infection rate and potential death sentence. With pellagra, nothing happened. So these filth parties did win over some skeptics, but predictably, the people who are very passionate about it, just like nowadays, it's not about facts, it's about politics, didn't go away.
I was about to say, unless he controls all of the news outlets and the newspapers, they're going to push whatever agenda they want to push. He has no control over that.
So eventually he did continue this researcher in the lab. He was looking for the specific nutrient because he knew it was diet-based, but he didn't know necessarily which nutrient was causing it. And he found that just a little bit of brewer's yeast could eliminate the disease. In fact, yeast helped stop the outbreak of pellagra along the Mississippi River in 1927 after a major flood destroyed all the food crops there. But he wanted to research farther to see if he could isolate the specific molecule. He thought it might be a vitamin, but couldn't prove it. The first Nobel Prize for vitamin work didn't happen until 1929. So this is still relatively new scientific field at that time.
Still in discovery.
So unfortunately, Goldberger did not live to see the discovery of niacin. He developed kidney cancer and died. So for the record, just to reiterate, the first Nobel Prize for vitamin work was awarded in 1929. Nobel vitamin research followed in the 1930s, and in 1937, the biochemist in Wisconsin finally isolated a molecule whose absence was responsible for pellagra, which is now called niacin or vitamin B3, but he died in 1929 at the age of 54. So he died before this was ever solved, which is sad.
Yeah, he never got to see the end of his mystery.
But he is remembered for the research and unfortunately to the filth parties, which is a little unfortunate.
Yeah, nobody probably wants that on their permanent record. What did you invent? What are you known for? Oh, discovering this and filth parties.
In the good news is that the United States has more or less eliminated pellagra in the years since his death. Federal and state laws during World War II mandated the addition of niacin to bread. So nowadays, a disease that once killed hundreds of thousands of people is really rare in the United States and usually only seen in people who are suffering with anorexia or severe alcoholism.
Oh, they're only eating a certain... Okay, that makes sense.
It does still happen in other parts of the world, though, unfortunately, Indonesia, China, Africa.
Or where it's not as researched.
Or just poverty in general, you know. Corn is a really easy thing to grow.
You eat what you have. And you might not have the versatility of your diet to be able to fix it.
Or you just might not know about it. It's really easy to grow and it's really easy to store. And so that is the story of how one person probably skipped a very important step and then killed hundreds of thousands of people and brought about the lore of vampires.
Yep, mass murderer, but it brought us vampires.
It did. Rabies, too, probably contributed to some of those lores.
Oh, I could see that.
It's probably, a combination of both, but this is a main factor that explains a lot of the vampire lore
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Never thought vampires, corn.
So if the apocalypse happens and you guys have listened to this podcast and you now know that you have to treat your corn before you eat it.
Probably a smart move.
Anyways, thank you for listening to us. If you liked what you heard, give us a like, subscribe to our channels, and we will see you on Tuesdays.
Goodbye.